This episode was co-produced by Startup Days, the Swiss networking and business event for startups, investors, enablers, and corporates. Check out Newcomers, the ultimate pitching format for pre-seed and seed startups in Switzerland. Applications are open from December 2nd, 2024 until March 16th, 2025. Find out more at startupdays.ch. Again, that's startupdays.ch.
The amount of support that the government or different funding agencies give in Switzerland are something that you don't see in any other country, like literally. There's so much money coming in, which is already really nice. But I think another thing, which I've never seen anywhere else, is the coaching. You apply for InnoSwiss, I want to become an entrepreneur. I want to do this and that. And then almost instantly they put a coach next to you for 1 year. Like, here's this guy, prove that together you can do it.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Sylvan.
Barbara, very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. Thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you very much, Sylvan, for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here as well.
You are the co-founder and CEO at Inveel, a startup providing technology for low-cost and high-speed production of extreme high-resolution printed electronics. We're going to dive deeper into that, what that actually means. But before that, I want to talk a bit more about your background. You come originally from Hungary, but after your PhD, you worked all across the globe, in Japan, in France, and then Switzerland. I personally also love Japan, so I just wonder, what brought you to Japan? What made you say yes to take a job in Japan?
Actually, I did my PhD in Japan. So I started originally my PhD in Hungary. And somewhere in the end of the first year, there's a couple of Japanese people came to my university from a research institute in Japan called the National Institute for Material Science. And they had a collaboration with my university and their institute. And they were recruiting PhD students to do some sort of a few months of, not internship, but like cross research at NIMS as well. And they were like, yeah, do you want to come? And I was like, yeah, sounds like a good opportunity.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? Exactly. And then I went there for 6 months, I thought. So I went there and then I realized very quickly that opportunities that we have is much better. So in terms of money, the amount of funding to do research was so much more in Japan. So I could use certain equipment on a weekly basis, while in Hungary, I needed to apply for grants to use it once or maybe twice. And even then they were like, okay, maybe you can use it. But in Japan, I was like, yeah, go ahead. You can book it. Go tomorrow. And then that means like I could really see that my research was like flourishing in a matter of weeks, simply because of the availability of equipment. So because of this, after a couple of months, I was expressing to my professor there at NIMS that maybe I would like to stay more. And then they were like, yeah, sure. Like we had a good collaboration. The research was going well. And eventually I just never left and I finished my PhD over there. So I spent 2.5 years doing PhD. Then I went back to Hungary to defend it because the degree is in Hungary. And then afterwards, I still went back to Japan because I continued the work there as a postdoc afterwards. So in total, I spent 4 years in Japan.
Wow, that's a long time in a very different culture. And I just wonder, how have these international experiences, Japan most notably, shaped you as a person, potentially as an entrepreneur as well?
So Japan was not my first country that I went to before. I've actually lived in Australia for a couple of years when I was a kid. I also went to the UK during my university days for almost half a year in total in Scotland. Yeah, so I think that already helped me to easily make the jump to Japan. And then there was Japan. And I think it really made me see the world as it is, that every place is so different. But the people are still the same nevertheless. People are people and they still have the same feelings, same experiences, even though they live in a totally different kind of way. And we can still, even in Europe, you can really see differences in different areas. But nevertheless, the problems and the feelings of people are always the same.
That's an interesting perspective. I like that a lot. So then ultimately, we're here now in Switzerland recording this podcast. So what actually drew you to Switzerland? What brought you here after all these other amazing countries that you've lived and worked in?
So eventually I got a job offer, and that's why I went to Switzerland. And so I got a position at the Paul Scherrer Institute, the PSI. And I was actually super happy to go there because in my scope, the two institutes that was really relevant to go to, like they're really good places. One was EMPA and one was PSI. So I already saw them from when I was still in Japan, like a couple of years before. They were like, wow, these two is really great. And eventually when I got the opportunity to go to PSI, I was really happy and I instantly said yes.
And these institutes, they're still also very research driven, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, today you are an entrepreneur. So when did that shift happen? Was it always your career goal to then maybe also translate research into entrepreneurship, or how did that happen?
No, it was definitely not something that I planned initially. So I was very academia focused in the beginning. I really wanted to become a professor. But at one point, I realized that it's not going to happen because, it's difficult to get a permanent position here. Also, at the same time, I always really liked the applied part of the research. So the basic science part was always a bit like, you need to do it a little bit, but
part of the game.
Yeah, but the applied part is always so much more interesting because something meaningful comes out of it. So eventually, afterwards I went to industry. After I finished my academic experience. And when I was in industry, I started really seeing how this life or this happens or how it works. And I realized that what I did and what I can do it as well. And then I started thinking about doing my own thing. Eventually, I also saw how easy, it's not a good word, how easy life is for startups in Switzerland, but there are a lot of opportunities. And at one point, I decided to make the jump.
I like this outside perspective of easy might be the wrong word, but you get a lot of support, especially in the early days, right?
Correct, yeah.
And I think that's something that we sometimes fail to see, how good we have it here in Switzerland, especially early stage. Please tell us a bit more about these early days, the support that you got, and also how that sort of helped you to really push the boundaries and eventually become an entrepreneur, because I think that's really inspiring.
I think the amount of support that the government or different funding agencies give in Switzerland are something that you don't see in any other country, like literally. And maybe like there's so much money coming in, which is already really nice. But I think another thing, which I've never seen anywhere else, is the coaching. You apply for InnoSwiss, I want to become an entrepreneur. I want to do this and that. And then almost instantly, they put a coach next to you for 1 year. Like, here's this guy, prove that together you can do it. And I mean, when I started in the very beginning, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have ideas, but... And then there was my coach next to me, and then he was like, okay, you need to focus, you need to figure it out, you need to do this, 1 year later, I was in a totally different place, and I have to thank so much to my coach.
That's amazing, because having someone by your side who has ideally walked the talk before and brings all that experience allows you to go through the learning curve much faster instead of making all the mistakes yourself, right?
Exactly. And it's not just the learning curve, but actually having a path. Because I think for a lot of people in the very beginning, we don't know how to do this. I mean, especially most startups are coming from academia or PhD students or something. No. I would say, I don't know, maybe you know better how much percent, but I feel just by looking at the people, 80, 90%. Yeah. I think a big majority has no idea what to do in the beginning. And that's why putting a guy next to you who does know what to do, he doesn't do it instead of you, but tells you which path to go, Yeah. And then you need to do all the exercises anyway. But this experience, like really, it accelerates you so extremely.
And it's not only science students. I did my business degree here in Switzerland, but I also had no clue what to do in my first startup. It was just like you jump into the cold water and you try not to drown in it.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And there, the coach, we also had a coach, luckily, helped us tremendously.
Yeah.
Like that was ultimately the person who helped us to set everything right from the beginning and avoid very costly mistakes, ideally.
Exactly, yeah.
So I assume these support programs, and because you were here, that was also sort of a no-brainer to start your company here.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's dive in. You started Inveel in 2024. What is the core of your innovative tech for high-precision electronics manufacturing? Tell us a bit more, like we have no clue about what you're actually doing.
We developed a technology to be able to create electronic circuits additively, which means that you have a random substrate, you place nanoparticles in a certain way, and then at the end, you put it in an oven, and all the nanoparticles merge together, and you have a circuit. And this is not something we invented, but we invented a way to make this much more higher in terms of precision than the state of art. And this is what's the basic of the whole thing, that we have a very good printing method to create sensors or circuits on surfaces. And this is what at the end is what we're doing.
Now I get it also a bit better. What are the use cases for this technology? Like what can you actually do or build with it?
So you can make sensors or electronics on random surfaces. And because of the fact that we do it so fine, so high in resolution, meaning in the hundreds of nanometers scale, it means that we can also do it transparent, which at the end we don't utilize. But initially that was one of the use cases that we were looking at, that, wow, we can print sensors on glasses, we can print sensors on windows, we can print sensors on whatever. And this is how the entire company started initially, that we have this awesome process. And then this is where actually the first blocker happened. Like, okay, but what do we use it for? We can use it for anything, all the things in the world. I think I spent almost a year afterwards talking to everybody in different fields to figure out which one to choose at the end.
And that's a bit the classic thing, right? Hey, we just discovered an amazing new breakthrough technology, but now we look for a problem to solve.
Yeah.
Where did you find the right vertical to go into? What is your focus today?
Yeah. So eventually we decided to go towards robotics. We are doing sensory skins for robots. So basically large area polymers that can be modified also in terms of like to put it on 3D objects, like let's say an elbow of a robot, which is spherical. And the idea came eventually because as I was mentioning, I was talking to everybody. We were listening like, should we put it on glass, window glasses? Because it really makes sense. Okay, but the problem there, you need to do square meters. At that point, we just did a couple of centimeters.
Yeah, it's too high of volume to cover.
Exactly. Yeah. So we could go to square meters, but that needs so much money to start with. You don't want to go down that road at the beginning. Okay, let's do something else. Maybe displays and so on. Yeah, but it's quite, there are big players there. You're not going to be able to do anything against the big TV maker guys, you know. Yeah. Okay, that's not that one. Okay, but then this also these conclusions came after talking to, I don't know, 10, 15 people in each field. Okay, then maybe biosensors. That fits really well. Actually, that was a good topic. But there, first of all, there's all the regulatory things you need to go through, especially the MDR and FDA and so on. But the other problem is that in terms of process, we would have needed to change the materials as well, and then that again means a lot of R&D. So, okay, no, let's look more in other directions. And eventually we started going towards this robotic topic, and we realized the need is enormous. It's not covered at all. So the need is more enormous. The market is expanding like crazy. Yeah. And we hardly need to do any extra work because what we can do now is actually fitting really well. So all these boxes were ticked. And then we realized, wow, all the most important boxes are ticked. We still talked to a lot of players there just to have a confirmation. And eventually we decided, okay, this is what we do. And then afterwards, the rest of the guys, we still talk to people because time to time they come to us. And of course, it's really great. And we don't push anybody away. But our focus is on robotics.
You make it sound so easy, but I'm sure the process was not, because that's one of the most important things for any founder to figure out where is the right focus for my company, for my technology to really double down. Describe us a bit more about that feeling and the process that led you to that, because I'm sure there are plenty of learnings there for other entrepreneurs out there. Why did you not give up along the process when the first initial feedbacks are it's too expensive or there are too big established players to compete with? So why did you not give up? And B, how did it feel? How did you really find the goal, so to speak, the right focus for your company?
I just knew it has to be something, because the fact that there was so much to do, my biggest fear was that I'm not seeing something. I'm not finding the right one. Yeah, I mean, initially, I didn't give up because nobody was saying no, like, nah, this doesn't make sense for you. It was just, you need to work on this, Okay. So and I never got, okay, there were some parts when there was a clear no in some markets, and that's okay. But there were always good options, like, yeah, let's go to, I don't know, Windows. But eventually, we started seeing better ones coming along. So it was never really like, oh no, this is not working. Oh no, this is not working. Oh no, this is not working. But rather was like, okay, if we choose this one, we need to do this. Is this the right one? Let's look a little bit more before we decide to start doing R&D on something that maybe we don't need.
And then you just always found something better, basically, like until you then ended up with the robotics industry.
Yes, kind of like that. But I mean, for example, the biosensors and the windows, they were always still in the bag. So we didn't push them completely out, even though there were some other ones that maybe seemed better. And at one point when we were like, let's have a decision, then what we did is we made a map, like kind of like a comparison. We graded what do we need. In 2 points of views, we graded them like, what is the market like? What is the potential? How much investment do we need? What is the competitor fields are like? And we kind of gave it a score. And then at another point of view, we made another assessment is how much extra effort do we need to do in order to get there? And we also made a score. And then we had a visual comparison of the scores. And that really helped at the end to choose, this one has way better potential than the other ones.
Amazing. And what did he ask the potential customers in the robotics industry? Did you say, hey, this is our technology, this is what it can do? Or did you do more like a problem analysis and understand what their challenges were? What were the questions that you asked them? Yeah,
I didn't go there as a potential customer. No, they were just guys I wanted to talk to, to understand what is their problem. Because at that point, I had nothing, I had the process, but who knows how to use it? I don't know. They don't know. Nobody knows. Yeah. I just wanted to understand how's it going for them? What are their problems? What could I do? So all the time I was just like, hello, now I do this, blah, blah, blah. Nice to meet you. Talk, tell me your problems. Why? Oh, really? Why? And then after talking to, 10, 15 people, you have a rough idea what is everybody's problem, actually.
And you started to see patterns, I imagine.
Oh, yes,
and then,
yes, absolutely.
This we can actually solve.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes, at the end, I always told them, we do this, we make circuits, very fine. And very often they were like, cool, I don't know what to do with that. I was like, me neither. But sometimes they were like guiding me, I was guiding them, or we were like brainstorming a little bit, but we never really went in the direction of you're going to be my customer.
That then just sort of happened naturally.
Yes.
So what new things will these robots that you will work with eventually be able to do with your technology?
What are they going to be able to do? So now we have this sensory skin. So the idea, this is a large area. That's kind of like an artificial skin. It's a bit of a stretch. It's polymer, but it has integrated sensors inside, which means that it has multiple pixels of touch sensors. And we can also integrate proximity sensors or temperature sensors. And with the touch sensors, basically what we can do is you have this skin, you place it on a robot, and what it does, let's say you put it on the grippers, so like the hands of the robots, what it means that it will know where exactly is it holding an object. Like, is it the side of the finger, the middle, or the bottom, or the top? Mm-hmm. How strongly is it holding an object? Like, let's say if it's holding an egg, it's quite a difficult object to hold. It's very important to know that, is it holding it properly in the middle, right, or is it starting to slip? Because if it's starting to slip, the robot will start to feel it, that it's in a different area of the skin. It starts to signal as well. Yeah. And if it's slipping, he needs to correct. And if he does, he needs to know how strongly does it hold it. Because if it's like, it does a big grip, then the egg is going to be like, breaks, and that's obviously not the way to go. So these kind of things, this kind of skin really helps to solve. Or just another example, if you put it on the knee of a humanoid robot, then it's like kind of walking. But if it's one of the problems, for example, specifically for humanoid robots, is if it's walking, and as it's walking, it bumps into a table with its knee. That's super hard to correct because usually they don't notice it, but it instantly makes them fall over. So if you put it on a knee, then he will know that, I'm going to fall soon, because these sensors have to be very fast as well. Mm-hmm. And then he quickly corrects his body posture, and this way he can make it without falling over. So there's a lot. Or if you can also put it on the feet, the sole of the feet, then he knows if it's stepping on a stair properly or not, or he steps on a rock, which is kind of coming out. And it's also very easy for a robot to flip over and fall. So all these kind of things, there's so many use cases just for this one single skin, just for example, for a humanoid robot. So it's super exciting, I think, for even for the robotics players to have such a technology.
So basically, if I understand that correctly, you help them make the robots way more precise and gentle with everything, with their whole movement, with the things that they transport or grab. Exactly. It's a game changer, basically, for robots to make them way more precise.
I think so, yeah.
Wow.
And one more thing we can also put is proximity sensors, which kind of gives robots superhuman properties. So it makes the robot feel if there's a person nearby. So because one of the problems with robots, why robots are not together with people, because they are quite heavy and they have big bulky bodies, metal, they can be fast. But if it hits a person, that can hurt.
Of course.
The robot could feel that when they're putting their arms out, there's a person in a couple of centimeters away, and can stop in time in order to not hit the person. So this is also something that we're working on to be able to integrate into the skins.
Wow, amazing. And that will hopefully help us to make robots roll out faster and better in the world in that sense.
Exactly. And faster is a good word, because usually robots know if there's a person nearby, they have cameras. Mm-hmm. But when they see there's a person nearby, they become very slow, just to be on the safe side that, even if I touch the person or he touches me or whatever, there's not going to be any harm. It's like kind of a risk mitigation. Yeah. But when you have this skin, the robot can be still very fast, because there's an additional safety.
Makes a ton of sense. Now I'm curious, what does your business model look like? Because you don't build the robots, but you actually work with the robotics companies behind it. How do you charge them for your breakthrough technology?
Yeah, so we are still in development phase, but now what we're doing is we're establishing pilots with big players, which is good for everybody. It's good for us. It gives a small portion of revenue. It's good for the big robotic players, because what we're doing now is going to be tailored to their exact needs. And they could be the first early adopters who use this technology. And at the end of the pilot, when it's going to finish, hopefully it's going to be successful. And when that happens, the expectation is that the big robotic company is going to start ordering. So at the same time, we will need to figure out the production as well.
Yeah.
And start ramping it up.
Fair. And ordering sounds like they basically buy the product, the skin from you, so to speak. But will there also be any subscription piece, or will it be a pure, hey, I give you money one time, this is what I get, done deal?
Yeah.
Or maybe hard to say,
It's a bit hard to say. I expect there will be a need for this, especially when it comes to touch sensors, because even like human skin, you know, you lose your skin time to time. You don't see it, but you literally do lose your skin. And it's the same here, that after a certain amount of touches, there will be, naturally, it has to slowly kind of like erode. So the idea is that it has to be very easily, but it has to be replaceable. So you take a skin, you clip it off, put a new one in, and then continue.
Yeah. So there might be a subscription part eventually, who knows?
Yeah, that would be the goal.
So now you said you are sort of doing paid pilots with the first also bigger brands. I just wonder, how do you structure these early customer acquisitions? You said it's a win-win in the end, but you need to get paid. You have also bills to pay and research to do or to do the implementation. So how do you structure these early deals? How do you make sure that it's a win-win for both parties?
Yeah, this is something that we're still figuring out. But I think the answer for this one is we need to really find the niche market that this skin is being used for initially. So that we're not doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of third thing.
No.
But it really has to be as much as possible focused for the pilots. And I have to say that this is still work in progress, but this is how it should be done.
Fair enough. And we already talked a bit about the funding part with like the initiatives like InnoSwiss who supported you in the early days. But finding investors and also grants is another big thing to do. You got a grant from PSI where you were doing research before, about 150K for a fellowship. What is your fundraising strategy? Is it more like, okay, in the early days, I want to focus on these non-dilutive funding options like fellowships and other grants? And then once we can prove something, I want to go and get some investors and give away equity. What is your fundraising strategy in that sense to stay afloat?
Since we're a spin-off of PSI, that was a really good kind of like a kickstart. I think without this PSI fellowship, I'm not sure if it would have been possible to start. So I think it was a necessary thing and it was great. We're very thankful for PSI for this opportunity. At the moment, somehow with all the non-dilutive grants and bootstrapping and so on, we're kind of afloat. And I think this is a strategy that we're doing, is to try to go as organic as possible in the beginning, simply because what I see is that if we would start with the fundraising too early, there's too big of a risk to somehow things don't work out and the whole thing just crashes and it's finished.
No.
If we go a little bit slow in the beginning, maybe it's not as fast as we would hope for, or of course everybody wants to be fast. But if it's a bit more organic, a lot of these risks are being taken out just simply because we establish some sort of revenue ourselves as well. And by the time the investors come in, it's really about making it just big and upscaling and
they know it's working. I think that's a very, very important part. Sometimes it's more sustainable to go a few steps a bit slower in the beginning and then really fast afterwards, but you have much higher certainty that the fast steps actually are headed in the right direction.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. We were to get too much funding too early, probably we would have missed out from some of the very crucial steps like the market search or really finding the right niche, which takes so much time to talk to all these people. And it's still work in progress to find the little niche, the tiny one within the robotics, within this circle, within that circle inside. So it's still work in progress. And if we would have all the money in the world to just start making something great, we would have just chosen the first easy one that feels like it's going to be the good way to go. And then we would have started doing R&D. But would that be the good way to go? I'm not sure. Maybe yes. Maybe if we're lucky,
But maybe you only find out half a year or a year later that it was not the right focus. And then you lost a lot of time, energy, and money on
exactly.
that bet.
Exactly. So that's why I'm a little bit preferring to go down the hard route to be poor, but make an effort to talk to everybody, like literally everybody.
I love that. Another topic I want to talk to you about is, because you're an early stage founder basically, but you did already so much of the heavy lifting part. And I just love seeing how you as a founder split your time. So the first question I have is, when did you know or feel that it was right to go full-time on Inveel, to work full-time on your project?
So we got the fellowship from PSI, and then from there we knew. But already before I felt that this is something I want to do, it's just really, we needed to have the funding sorted out because, at that time, I had a little kid. I mean, they're still little kids, but it was like a baby at that time. So you can't just jump. So these things we needed to sort out. And then when the time was right, that, the baby was able to go to walk and go to the kita. And then from that point, I started to really focus on other things on life apart from family.
Yeah. The second question I have in that regard is, you have so many, it feels like a million tasks at hand that you could do or should do sometimes. How did you focus, or what did you actually focus on? One big chunk was probably the user interviews to better understand the markets and the different sectors. What else were you focusing on in the early days? What was the most important stuff that really moved the needle forward for you and your company?
So together with my co-founder, we focused on the business development, of course. There's a lot of marketing as well we need to do. That's a little bit less on my shoulders, luckily. And then the R&D, it still needed to go, there's still things to do. Maybe it's not so targeted, but, you have a general idea what you want to do. There's always tons of things to do without specifying too much. So that one is always ongoing. And then, of course, fundraising, money. It's figuring out how to get the next couple of months going.
So if I understand that correct, there were basically three core tasks that you were focusing on. One, fundraising. Obviously, you needed some money to be able to continue to work full-time on it, to also feed your family. Second one, developing the product. That was mainly R&D driven. And the third one, doing sales or partnerships to get the commercials right. These are the three focus areas probably, and that's what you were focusing on. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Because a lot of people, who never founded a company, often think, I need to have this great logo, or I need to go to this conference and that conference. And that all feels like you're very busy, but these are all things that probably don't really move the needle forward for your company. It feels you're doing a lot of stuff, but it's probably not that helpful compared to the things that you just described.
I sometimes go to conference. I went to quite a lot of conference in the very beginning. Then I stopped because I realized it's taking a full day away, and I get 2-3 meaningful contacts maybe.
That's an expensive investment, so to speak, right?
Exactly. Not in terms of money, but in terms of time.
Of course.
So I kind of stopped. The only time I go now to conference is if I have to do a talk. Yeah. Because then that gives visibility, and that's valuable. Otherwise, usually now I skip it unless there's a really good reason to go there. Yeah.
I like that statement. I think that's a good reality check. The last part of splitting your time as a founder, I also wonder, you just mentioned you are a mom, you are a founder, and you also have yourself as a person. How do you sort of get this work-life balance? Maybe that's the wrong word, but how do you balance and make sure that you stay energetic, productive, and don't burn out along this very intense process of building a company?
Yeah, difficult question. I really try to make sure that work gets done, and I really try to make sure that the kids don't notice it. So it's kind of like, it's not a work-life balance that I do. It's kind of like an interconnection, or I don't know. I can easily do work, do at 2 p.m., go to the doctor with the kids, again, continue working, 6 p.m. dinner, or whatever I have to do, and do kind of like a comb that it's like jumping from one to the other. Perhaps the third one is focusing on myself is the one that's being kind of put aside, which makes things difficult. It really helps that what I do, I enjoy. So it's kind of like doing a hobby. I'm having tons of fun with it. However, it is true that everybody keeps saying that like take care of your mental health. And it's really something people have to like consciously make sure that they rest and have time when there is no work done, because burnout is a thing. And it's very easy to not notice that you're burning out, and suddenly it's like, wow, I'm getting close. So yeah, it's really, somebody was telling me, maybe one of my discussions when I had with these millions of people,
Sure.
There's basically two candles as a founder you need to keep an eye on. One is the money candle. Everybody takes care of that. It's a well-known thing. Okay, if your candle kind of like burns away, you have no more money, then company's dead. But the other candle that nobody really focuses on is the motivation candle. And it's so easy to just light it up, then you do your thing, and then at one point it burns off and you can't do anything anymore. And that's the part where people give up and close the whole thing. I can't do this anymore. I finish. And since this guy was telling me about this, I always try to look at both of my candles. Of course, the money candle you always keep an eye on, but how is my motivation candle? Ooh, there's not much left. So maybe I should a little bit, if you don't have really big time deadlines coming in or something that you must do, maybe take a rest and take it easy. Because if you always go 120% or 100%, but you need to at one point focus and really push it, then you can't.
Of course.
So sometimes you have to a little bit loosen it.
And how do you sort of recharge that motivation or maybe also energy candle? What can you do to keep it burning, to keep it afloat as well, despite the money candle?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think what helps, one is sometimes just shut the computer, disable the apps on the phone, and unless there's a really big crisis, not even respond to anything for a couple of days. Like big deadline, you done everything. Okay, done. You did what you needed to do. Shut the computer, keep the whole weekend, just go out to the mountains. Don't think about work, and then you can restart later on Monday when you go back to office. That's one, and sometimes it's not enough. Yeah. But that's, I think, something, it has to be done. Time to time, you have to just close it.
And I guess you feel it when it's time to do so.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing is exercise. Yeah. Like, you need to have times when you stand up and, okay, you're stressed, go out for a run, take the dog out, something, just be outside, move your muscles, get the stress out, do boxing, I don't know,
whatever works for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody likes swimming, I don't. Do the thing that you like doing that takes away all your energy. Yeah. And then you go back, and even if sometimes you're like, oh, I don't want to do this, you go out, you do it, and you come back home and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did it.
You feel much better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think this is something, perhaps maybe you have to put it in your calendar, that you have a time blocker, that now it's the time to run or whatever. Yeah. But I think this is one thing that has to be done.
I love that. But there's this balance, right? You mentioned before, you really enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
And with that, it's sometimes easy to forget this motivation candle, because you just want to keep going. You just want to achieve the next goal, the next milestone, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So it really is a balance that you sometimes probably have to really force yourself to take it and to also look at this second candle that you have there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And exactly what you're saying, that I really love what I'm doing. But when you do this for like 60, 70 hours in 1 week, and it's fun, but at the 70th hour, you're like, oh my God, I can't look at another email. It's important to read it, but I can't. That's exactly why you consciously have to do the part where you're not doing something fun about work,
Exactly. Now, you're just getting started, and it's a really exciting start with the upcoming partnerships, the continuous R&D, etc. What is your team and you are basically looking forward to achieving next? What's sort of the next milestone that you're tackling together?
Yeah. So now that we're more or less starting to figure out the niche, now all the R&D is going in that direction. So we want to improve the prototype. We want to make it better, go towards the MVP, and start producing as soon as possible. So these are our not immediate goals, but in 2025.
Moving to production, that's the headline, basically.
Exactly.
I love that. Now, to wrap up today, we also prepared some rapid fire questions for you. I give you a short question you have to answer in 1 sentence maximum.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
What's the best thing for you about being an entrepreneur?
I don't have a boss.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. What do you miss about Japan?
It's exciting and so much fun.
Yeah.
The fun part.
You want to go back there eventually?
I go back every now and then. Yeah.
Cool.
So I moved out from Japan 2014. I've been back 2 times, but then there was COVID. That's the reason. Yeah. So since 2020, we don't go much anywhere. This is something I would love to change, by the way, but
maybe one of the partnerships could be in Japan. Who knows?
Yeah, hopefully.
What is Switzerland's best quality from your perspective?
Everybody talks about mountains and nice scenery, but from my point of view, why I love Switzerland is because everybody is clever. Like the general population, when you talk to an average Joe in the street, people are clever. They are intelligent. That's what I like about Switzerland.
That speaks for the education system, I guess.
Oh, yeah. And for me, that's very important. In some other countries, you can really find the lowest of the low, but here in Switzerland, no.
Well, that's great to hear from from your perspective. Bootstrapping or fundraising?
Yeah, we discussed this. First bootstrapping, then fundraising.
Absolutely. And the last, I know it's going to be a bit of a mean question for you, but I'm just curious to hear your answer. Japan, Hungary, or Switzerland?
The answer for me, as a child, Hungary, as a young adult, Japan, and as older adult, Switzerland, simply because each of them is the best at the certain stage of life and not necessarily the best at later stages.
Wonderful. I love that so much. Barbara, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here and great discussion. Thank you for all your insights and the best of luck for the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation as well.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.